consultant architecture on Microsoft Azure and Enterprise Application. Today, we will talk about MVC Software Architectural Pattern. MVC Software Architectural Pattern is also called as MVC Design Pattern or just MVC Pattern. It is not a recent pattern. It has been in existence since 1978. It was first described by Tigray Renenskog at Palo Alto Research Center at Xerox Corporation. It is a modelization pattern, which means the software application is broken into different modules. In this case, it is broken into three components, that is model, view, and controller. It is a widely used pattern. It is a central part of many frameworks. It is not only used in Microsoft ASP.NET, it is also used by Java, PHP, Perl, etc. And in fact, the first program that I wrote in MVC was in Java. The central idea behind MVC design pattern is reusability, separation of concern, and testability. One of the key rule in MVC pattern is the connection between model and view should be always through the controller module. That means if model have to view, it has to connect through the controller module, or if view has to connect to model, it has to connect through the controller module. Now let us look at the different components in MVC. It has three main components. M stands for model, V stands for view, and C stands for controller. Model handles data, view handles presentation, and controller handles decision. Now let us look into details. M in MVC again stands for model. Model handles data, business rules, and through the model that you actually connect and model is nothing but a class when you're writing in your application, and again it is nothing but an instance of the class, which is an object. And when the state of the model changes, that is when the data in the model changes, the model needs to notify the controller and the view that the model has changed. And MVC has two modes of operation. One is active mode and passive mode. ASP.NET does not use active mode, it uses passive mode. In active mode, what happens is as soon as model changes, it actually tells the view and controller, it sends a notification telling the model has changed. But in ASP.NET, which uses the passive mode, the controller has to query or call the model to check whether the model has changed. The view also will have to call the model through the controller to check whether the data has changed. This can be implemented using in the server side using SignalR, and probably in the view side using Kendo or similar technologies. View in MVC stands for view. View handles presentation, or it is just the display. It displays the data to the user. It uses data from the model and displays the information to the user. It receives from data from the model via the controller. I told you that one of the core rules is none of these components interact with each other than through the controller. Now let us look at the C in MVC, which is actually the controller. Controller handles decision. It accepts user input. It processes the user input and it acts on it. One example is when user wants to update a model, it sends input to the controller. Controller analyzes the input and it updates the model or it updates the view based on the user input. And one of the core functionality of controller is actually to transfer data from model to the view and from model to the controller. Again, I told you about the rule that the data can be transferred from model to view and from view to model only through the controller. It cannot directly transfer data from view to the model or from model to the view. Now let us look at the structural relationship between objects, model, view, and controller. Now this diagram all of you would have seen in most of the textbook or in many websites. One question that I had while I was learning was, what does these arrows represent? Now the answer to that is, these arrows represent direct association, whereas dotted arrows represent indirect association. Well, let's come to this later. Direct association means it is a delegate link. Let me explain it. In here, controller has direct association between view and it has direct association with model, which means the controller needs to know the type of the model the view is expecting, and controller needs to know the model type to send data. That means it is expecting a delegate. In delegate link, you need to know what the other model is expecting, and we have to send the exact information. Similarly, in the view is tightly coupled with model in the sense that it has a direct association in the sense view displays in the model. Actually, view has a model, right? It has a class, and it is expecting the type of the model that you're sending. So that means there is a direct association between view and model. Now, the second thing that I had always asked to myself was, what does this dotted lines in the diagram represent? The dotted lines in the diagram represents an indirect association. Indirect association means the model has an indirect association with view. That means when the user tells that I want to update that model, the view does not it sends the data to the controller. It is the controller know that which binds the data to the model which the model is expecting, and it gives the data to the model. That means view does not know or does not create an instance of the model here in the view. The view again has indirect association with controller, which means the view does not create an instance of the object of the controller and send it to the controller. View just sends the data as query text. It is not sending it as an object. And it is up to the controller to look at the data and bind it. Now, let us look at the right way of coding. Many people have asked me, where do you validate? The validation, the data access, and the business process, everything happens at the controller, right? So most of the things that are needed for the business, you do it in the controller. Handling events should be handled at the controller and not in the view. Then one golden rule is you do not write data access code in the controller. It has to be written in the model. And another question is, each controller has a view of its own as well as a model. Now I have my controller, and there is another controller which has its own view and model. In my view, if I click on a button and I want to update a model that is linked to another controller, how do I do that? The right way to do it is send the data to your controller and let your controller call that the second controller and ask it to update the model. I mean, there are a lot of things, and I have just put in a couple of them, so we can actually look at the best practices somewhere. Now let's look at some of the advantages of using ASP.NET MVC. One is separation of concern. That is, we have 3 different loosely coupled components: model, view, and controller. And MVC allows you to develop application in blocks, so that makes it easier for engineers, software architects, and UI designers to focus on what they do best. And finally, it all gets integrated pretty well. Then one of the advantage for the designers is it gives MVC gives a high degree of control over the rendered HTML. That means the designers are free to write their own HTML. And another advantage is you don't have any server control. So basically, you write everything in HTML. Then MVC supports routing. I mean, it is not, you can do routing in ASP.NET Web Forms also. We'll talk about it later. MVC is ideal for large application where testability is a big concern. It is ideal for test-driven development. Automated testing can be done much easier in MVC, or the best in MVC. It is pretty difficult to do automation testing in ASP.NET Web Forms. Now, there are a couple of variants of MVC pattern: MVC, MVA, MVP, and MVVM. MVVM is a pattern that is being used widely now. Probably we can have a session on MVVM some other time. Now, one of the questions that most of you would have is ASP.NET going to replace, is ASP.NET MVC going to replace ASP.NET Web Forms? Answer is no. These are parallel technologies. ASP.NET MVC is currently becoming popular, but it is not a replacement for ASP.NET Web Forms. Anything that you can do in ASP.NET Web Forms can be done in ASP.NET MVC. Finally, if you look at performance, both of them give you similar performance. If you're thinking about Entity Framework can be used in ASP.NET Web Forms also. That is one of the questions that many people have asked me. Then again, one more thing is what are the scope for ASP.NET Web Forms and ASP.NET MVC? The architects decide which technologies to use based on the current need, which is best for the particular solution in hand. Recently, I was involved in two projects. First project, we decided to go with ASP.NET MVC Web API, and second project, we decided to go with ASP.NET Web Forms because that suited our need better. Anyway, this is end of first session. We will start with the second session immediately. So in the previous session, we discussed about MVC software architectural pattern. In this session, we will create a couple of applications and we will discuss the basic of ASP.NET MVC. So this is what is planned for today. We will build a small Hello World application, which only would have the controller in the MVC. Then slowly in the next application, we will add the view. Then finally, we will add the model. And we will build a new application which will have a database access. And we will use Entity Framework database first methodology for that. And one thing I would like to do is actually to put this up on a server, the simple Hello World application, as soon as we have got it running. And I would use Microsoft Azure for hosting it. Now, when we start with the Hello World application with only the controller, these are the elements that, components or elements that I would like to explore. We will look at what is controller, what is action method, what is action result, routing, action parameters, and action filters. Let me just open my Visual Studio and I will just create the project. I would create Hello World project, and I would choose one of the projects from the template provided by Visual Studio. Generally, when you want to build an MVC project, you generally choose, MVC, this MVC template. But in this case, I'm going to choose an MVC template, and I am going to select MVC so that the core references are added. Now, just let me click on OK. Now, the default MVC templates gives me a couple of folders, app data, app start, or application level folders. This is where you actually put your application data, and app start is where you put your application level elements. The MVC by default has created 3 folders: controller, where you add your controller. Then you have model, where you add your model. A model is nothing but a class. So basically, you just go ahead and add a class here for a model, and you add your views. Views are HTML, JavaScript, etc. Now I will start by adding a controller. There are different options that are available to me: empty template, read-write action, and using entity framework. This entity framework, the final project, that final lab we have today, is actually using entity framework, and I'll demo that. For now, I will start with MVC 5 empty template, and I'll give the name Hello World. I can see that an action method is already created for me. Action method is nothing but any method that you put in controller, which is public, is called action method. Let us look at the different elements. I have a controller here. I have an action method here, and I have action result. Right? Controller, action method, action result. Now, action result is nothing but a type. So basically, I can define a new action method, public string, and I can just put a type of string as the return value, and I would just give hello return content, or it's a string, so I can just return a string, return hello world. In this case, if I'm calling index, I would have to return again hello world index, right? And since it is an action result type, right, it will show that it is expecting an action result type. So I will give one of the action results type, and in this case, I am returning content. There are different action results type available, like some of the results are you can actually return a JSON, you can return a view like it was earlier, or you can return a file, right? So there are a lot of different action results type. We will I have a couple of, I have it listed in the PowerPoint. So let me go ahead and run this application. And I'm expecting an error because I have not specified, which controller and which action method it should call. Controller and action method is central to how user interacts. The central component in user interaction in an MVC application is actually the controller and action method. The controller and action method has one-to-one mapping with events. So basically, I have a controller, I have an action method. So to call this controller and action method, what I have to give is, I have to give hello world, and my action method is like index. I'll just display hello world first. Right, hello. So this is actually the simplest application you can write in MVC. All it does is it just returns a hello world. Now, if I want to call a different, action method, I can just call it. So basically, if it is the controller and action method, are integral part of user interaction in MVC. That means when you raise an event from your browser, user interaction event from your browser, what you are specifying is you are specifying the controller and action method. The URL generally contains information for the controller to interpret and call the right action method. I have already described what is action result. Action result is nothing but a type. We have already covered action method. Now let us discuss about what is routing. Routing in ASP.NET MVC is handled using a routing engine provided by ASP.NET MVC framework. Routing helps users to provide user-friendly URLs. So basically, this is a user-friendly URL. Like, I'm not calling something like default hello world.aspx like how we would have called in ASP.NET MVC web forms. Routing can map URL to file or class like controller in MVC. That means right in here, what we are doing is routing is actually mapping the URL. This is actually the URL. You are mapping this thing to a controller here. Routing can be used in ASP.NET web forms also. Routing is not, just specific to MVC. It is provided by ASP.NET framework. That means you can go ahead and use routing in ASP.NET web forms also. Now let us look at how this routing happens, right? Routing happens using a route table. So basically, you have a route table and you specify the different routes in the route table. So here in global.asx file, I am registering the routes. That means I have multiple routes in here and I'm registering it. Now, when I run this application, right, I am getting an error. How do I make my controller and my action method to work? So let me copy this controller name. Before that, let me explain that we are adding a route to the routing table using this function routes.maproute. Maproute has a name. It contains a pattern, right? URL pattern, and it has default values. So basically, if I want to put default values as my controller name, and say if I want to call my hello method, right? This is what I do. See, I don't have any error. This is because I have configured the routing table. I have configured the routing table with default values. So the default route is controller, action, and ID is an optional parameter. Now let me add my own route. Let me just copy this route, right? Suppose in my website like Code for Beginner, I want to display profile of users, and it should happen when they type in Code for Beginner / profile. So I'll just define it as profiles or user Now this route is, I have to give a route name, and the URL is only expecting a name. And what I'm telling is, if there is a route that matches this particular route, that is just a name, then by default, hello world controller and action method user profile should be invoked. That means I'll just create a public string user profile, and I'm returning articles, say 10. Let me, 1 second. If I run this application, the default route will work and it will display hello world. Now, if I just type in Murugan, it displays Murugan hello world. So, hope you understood what routing is. Now we are left with action parameters and action filters. Action parameters are nothing but values received from request data collection. These are nothing but the values that are received from in your application from the URL. So let me modify this route profile to get string username and string number of articles. Let it be string. So I'll just modify this to get information from URL. And I would run this application. Here I would give, is it actually username, and articles is equal to 10. Okay, this number of articles. Should I just give it as articles? I just put it as 20. So that's 80. Right. All right. So what happens is when I pass in the data, I'll just put a breakpoint here. I'll just put my friend's name, Anand. And number of articles, I'll just put it as 150. So when I'm passing data from the URL, it actually gets automatically binded to user and Anand. Now, this is a little bit way off the topic, but let me show you that there is something called as model binder that dynamically binds data to the class. So let me just create a new class called user data. Just put it as user data 1, right? In case, and I'll just create a property called string called username, and again another public string called number of articles. Now, instead of the string parameters, I'm actually trying to pass a user data object. Let us see whether the binding happens automatically. So dot, yeah, it will happen because right, see, I can already see that it is visible. And let me just increase the 50. Number of articles is this one. Number of articles. I will put a breakpoint here to show that. 1 second. Okay, user profiles I have to create it as a public class. Okay. Now let me run this application again, and yes, you can see that. Let me run the application and show you first that it is actually displaying the data. Now let me run the application and show you that in Watch that it is binding the data to an object. This is actually called as dynamic data binding. So this will cover almost all the things other than action filters. Action filters add pre and post processing to action method. Let me create a new action method called display date. Public string display date. And return date dot time dot now to string. Let me make this the default method in route.config. Instead of hello, I'll just call display date. So when I run this, it will start displaying the date. Now if I click on refresh, what happens is as the second increases, the dates get displayed. So let me demonstrate the action filter by adding the cache attribute. And here I have to is it actually testing you? Attribute is duration, right? Duration I do it as 10 seconds. So basically what happens is when I add in this output cache, it caches the web page for a duration of this particular method for a duration of 10 seconds. Now let us see the difference. Last time I showed that the second was increasing every second. So when I click, it was increasing 1, 2, 3, it was going. Now it is 15. If I click on a refresh, right? Nothing happens. Now it is 25. That means after 10 seconds, it has cached that particular method. Now it is 37. So basically, this is an example of using action filters for caching. Action filters add pre and post operations to action methods. You can write your own custom filter. All you need to do is inherit action filter attribute from custom filter and override some of the methods. We'll come back to the details later. So what we would do is we'll go ahead and publish this application on Microsoft Azure. So basically, I'm just displaying the time. So let me do this by going to my Solution Explorer. I can create a website, and I can publish it to Microsoft Azure. I can click on Publish Microsoft Azure website. Let me click on Next. Okay. Need to select the website. And I'll just create a new website here. Site name is, just call it Hello World Demo. Hello World 40, right? Then in Microsoft Azure, you select the region that is nearest to you to your target audience. I'm not using any database. I'll just click on create, and it will take a few seconds to create a website on Microsoft Azure. If you need more information about Microsoft Azure, you can visit www.microsoftazure.beginner.com. There we have provided articles on how to sign up with Microsoft Azure, as well as how to publish or create this one on Microsoft Azure. Now, all I need to do is just click on publish. Publish has already started. It is going to take a couple of seconds to do that. And once the publish is done, automatically the page will open. Let me tell you that Microsoft Azure is actually for everyone. If you're a student, you can actually join the student Spark program of Microsoft, and Azure is available. If you're a small company, you can join the Spark program. That will actually give you a lot of benefits, plus around $200 of credit. So that Azure is available to, if you're working for a larger company, again, Azure probably is available to you. Anyway, this is the application. As I have shown you that the seconds changes. So I'm actually done with the basic application using controller only. Now let me add view. Let me start a new controller called add controller, empty controller. I would actually call it home. And you can see that as soon as I added a controller, the related directory is automatically generated. Let me change the default routing to use home and index. Let me run the application. I am expecting an error because I have not yet created a view page. The controller searches in home directory because home is actually the controller name. It searches in the shared directory also to see whether the ASCX page or whatever you plan to use is available. Now let me create a page, that is by adding a view, and I am actually selecting in empty view without model. Okay, so we have added a view to your MVC project. Now we have the controller as well as the view. Now let us discuss what is Razor. Now Razor is used to add, C# code into your HTML page. So let me start by showing a simple example on how to pass some data from controller to the view. I'm going to use viewbag dot my data. I'll just use view data. All right, fine. That's fine. Now, to display this data that is coming from the controller, you would need to use Racer syntax. Let me add the Racer syntax right below it. That is viewback.mydata. See, so basically Racer syntax allow you to add C# code into your CSHTML page. Let me at is almost like this at is almost like response.write in your MVC web forms application. To display this simple, what you have to do is you have to put two ats. This is actually to display at, sorry, at symbol. All right. And suppose I have, this is actually to add blocks of code where time is equal to date time dot now, where str time is equal to time dot to string. So this allows you to add opening brackets and closing brackets. Allow you to add code blocks. If you want to comment this code block, what you have to do is just select. You can comment it by using asterisk as starting, and you can put one thing that you can remember is you can actually mix HTML and code blocks. Racer. Let me define a variable of type integer. Integer total is equal to 20. And if I want to display total, I can just display total like this, and it will display 20. When I display total like that, I'm just using it is displaying 20. Symbol is displayed. When I'm using 20 like this, displaying 20, it is actually an implicit usage. Now, if I want to do like perform some operations like 20 by 10, right? Divided. If I try this will actually give you 20/10. It does not compute it. See, it is 20/10. It does not compute it. So to explicitly do some computation, what you do is you put it within an opening and closing bracket. Now this will give you the result too. And one more thing is, if you are typing your email address, right? The Racer is smart enough to understand that at is not a code block. So basically, your email address, you don't have to escape it. You can just directly give it as email. You don't have to put to at to display your email block. Racer is smart enough to understand it. So basically, that is Racer. HTML helpers are like traditional web form controls. They are lightweight. In most cases, HTML helper just returns a string. So basically, what HTML helpers does is it just returns returns a HTML string that needs to be rendered as the output. So let me use an HTML helper. So HTML action link. me go and create a home controller called action. Action link, I need to specify what is actually the link. Demo followed by link test is action link demo. Then you need to tell which controller I'm calling. So if I refresh this now, you can actually see an action link. And let me show you what that particular, this one has, the helper method has produced. It has produced nothing but just a href action link. So in case, you want to replace this action link later on in your application with just pure HTML, you can just go ahead and do that. If I click on action link, it just creates a link, HTML link. So it is same as directly action link demo HTML. See, it's the same as this one. So basically, you can either use helper methods or you can just directly write your HTML and call methods. Here also, one thing that you have to keep in mind that the calling convention is always, controller followed by the action method name. I will just run through it. I'm actually out of time. So basically, partial view enables you to define a view that will render inside a partial view. Render inside a parent view. Basically, it is nothing but a small view that you create that you can use inside a parent view. It is similar to web controls in ASP.NET. Now, layout is nothing but master pages. Let me just quickly demonstrate layout. Under the view, let me just go and create add view. Add new item, and I will actually use the ASP.NET MVC 5 layout page. I can give any name. This underscore or layout is not necessary. I can just go ahead and give any name. I will just use the default. And I will just give h1 to show it as header and h2 footer. Just put a copyright at code4.com. Now, partial views are used so that it gives you a standard look throughout the application. So if I'm creating, let me just go ahead and delete this index view, and I will go to the controller and use add view. Oops. Okay, I'll just add a demo to view. Add view, demo, user layout, and here I can select my layout page, click on add. Now if I call this, I have to call return the view in demo. You can see that the header and footer are rendered. And in demo page, if I open the demo.html page, if I add some more text like this is a test, it does not contain the layout page. It does not contain the header and footer, but the header and footer are actually coming from the layout. So that actually covers the view. Now, model is nothing but a class. It holds data. It holds functions to manipulate on the data, and it contains that to contain classes that represent the application application model. So, as I told you, model is nothing but a class. So I just go ahead and create a model called add new class and just call it as school. And I'll just give property string name and another property string location. I'll again go back to the home controller and create a action method called public action result. Demo model. Return view. And in this case, I plan to pass the school model. Using hello world.models school or school equal to new of school. Application name is Bangalore and name is Bishop Cottons or whatever, and I'll pass this model to the view. Now I can write add view, and in this case I'm selecting empty and I'm choosing to pass a model of type school. I will use the layout page. So the model object is actually passed to the view, and if I want to display information of the model class, what I have to do is I have to use a razor syntax called model dot location and model dot name. So basically, the Bishop Cottons and Bangalore, the information that was in the model is actually displayed on the view. I am not getting into the details on model because I will be demonstrating an application using Entity Framework. I have just another 5 minutes, so let me quickly start the new application. And let you know that I have already created a database for Entity Framework for this demo. The database name is actually student, and it has two tables. One is actually student with ID that is set as key, and it is set to auto increment. Identity specification is set to yes, And I have another table called relative, which has three fields: first name, last name, relation, and student ID. So this is actually the primary, the key connection between student and relative. And again, there is an ID, which value is actually set to set as a key, and it is set to auto increment. I have given identity specification as true. Let's create a new project. And in this project, I will be using the default template that generally you use while creating MVC applications. And I'll change authentication to no authentication. I'm not going to use authentication. Now, first thing I have to do is, you can see a lot more, code has already been added to this. Limitation of time, I will just select, I will let you know how we can actually add entity framework data first models to this model. I will just click on add new item. I would select data, ADO.NET entity data model. I would select the model name as school. Put it as school 1. And I have to give establish connection to my SQL server. I'm using authentication there, and I would select the student database. Test the connection. Include sensitive data into the connection string. I click on yes. It will create student entities, and you have option to use Entity Framework 6 or Entity Framework 5. Either of them is fine. I'm using Entity Framework 6. Now this screen allows me to add objects from my database to the model. So Entity Frameworks is nothing but an ORM. ORM is actually an object relational mapper. And I'm creating the model namespace as student model. Let me click on finish. And now that I have the model, what I can do is I can just scaffold and generate both controller as well as the view. I would actually go to the home controller and select. Now I'll go to the controller and I will select new scaffolding item. And I'm selecting MVC file controller with view using entity framework. Click on add. I would select the model, student model. The entity context is student entities, and it actually creates a student's controller. Right. And I'm generating add edit all the views. And let's run this. Create new. So the scaffolding actually, MVC scaffolding creates all the add, edit, delete methods to you, as well as the details view is also generated for you. I can click on details and it will show me the details view. This is actually the index view. I can delete this one, or I can even anyway. Probably I have not given the index correctly. So entity framework helps me to. There is a foreign key relation. That is the reason Murugan is actually linked with another table. That is why I'm not able to delete it. So if I click on index again, I probably delete Anand. Or Sunil. All right, so this is scaffolding, which actually generates the model and view. Let me actually add one more controller. Cletus. And let me add one more. Sister. Let me just click on create. So scaffolding allows me to add this one, automatically generate the edit page, details page, delete, etc. And one good thing about MVC, this one is it is smart enough to just give me a drop down just because I have specified the foreign key. Now the last thing in here is the view model. View model is again nothing but a class. For that, let me just create a directory called add new folder called view models. Add a class. So I'll just put it as student details. I'm running short of time, so what I'll do is I have this project already done earlier. So again, let me tell you that student details is nothing but a class. Okay, what's that? It is nothing but a class. I have a new controller called student details, in which my intention is actually to display student information plus my relatives. So what I would do is I just click run and show you that the student detail view help me to display my my name as well as the information regarding my relatives. So ideally, in a view model, you have a class that encapsulates index that encapsulate information of other classes also. So basically, Whatever is required for that particular view, you put everything into a single class. That means you have subclasses and you display it. I will quickly show you the view. In the view, I have a student, I have a model that will contain both the classes. Student and relatives, and I'm displaying the information of both students and relatives. So let us quickly go through what we have discussed today. In the demo, we have talked about action method, action results, routing, action parameters, and action filters. First is actually the controller. The controller is responsible for finding and calling the appropriate action methods, getting the value to an action method argument, and handling errors. Action method are nothing but public methods. We have discussed that earlier. And we have talked about action result. Action result is a type. There are a lot of different action result types that you can use. One is actually view, that we have already seen it earlier. If you want to return an empty value, we can do that. Now we have talked about routing in detail. Action parameters. Now action parameters are nothing but data that is a part of request collection. Then we discussed about action filters. Action filters add pre and post processing to action methods. And there is an option to create custom filters. You can have your own filter, say error log or something you want to create. You can inherit from the action filter attribute class, and you can override these methods. Executing is basically before the action is executed. Executed is actually before the action, after the action is executed. And on result executing is before the result has executed. And on result executed is after the result has executed. So these are the 4 methods that you override. You get information from the parameters. You can modify it, and you can send in your data. And MVC, there are 4 different types of action filters. Authorization filter, which handles authentication and authorization. Action filters that we have already discussed now. Result filter, which execute before and after a view result is executed. And exception filter, which is used to handle errors. We have already discussed about Razor, HTML helpers, partial views, and layout. Razor syntaxes, we have discussed about this earlier. Some of the basic syntax are at is basically just equivalent to response.write. Razor is a template markup syntax that let you embed server code into the web page. It allows you to create dynamic pages in .NET. Then we have talked about HTML helpers, and we have told that HTML helpers are not necessary. You can just use pure HTML, and you can invoke your methods, or you can do whatever you want with HTML. You can completely ignore Razor as long as you don't have any processing to be done. You can completely ignore HTML methods and do it completely on Razor. So sorry, do it completely on HTML. Partial views enables you to define a view that will be rendered inside a parent view. Partial views are implemented as ASP.NET user controls. Partial views instantiate, when partial views instantiate, it gets a copy of the model. I mean, ideally you can pass your model to the partial view or a part of the model to the partial view. That is what it is. A layout is similar to master page in ASP.NET MVC. It provides a base template. It gives you a consistent look. And we have discussed about what is model. Model is nothing but a class. It contains data as well as methods to manipulate the data. Entity framework, we have ran through it very fast. We have limited amount of time. Probably we can have a separate session to discuss entity framework. View model, is a model of the view. That means for a view, if it requires data from multiple models, you create a view model, and what that view model will do is you create instance of that model, bind it to that parent view model, and you send it to the view. And in that view, we can use at model dot and get the different models. In my example that I have shown you that I am passing two models. One is actually a student model and a list of relatives, right? And in that model, I'm using at student at model dot student and at model dot relatives to get information for my view. Thank you. I am running short of time, so I'll think we have little time for questionnaire today. So if you would like to post questions, you can actually visit Facebook and join the group MVC for Beginner. And you can post questions there. Definitely, I will make sure that I answer all the questions. These are some of my websites: codeforbeginner.com, MVC blogs. If you have any questions, you can feel free to contact me at murugan@pixelstock.com. Thank you.